On my recent classic New England and Canada cruise on the Caribbean Princess, my friend Don Terrace and myself, we faced a dilemma. Do we explore Halifax, Nova Scotia through a cruise ship excursion, or do we do it ourselves? Well, we decided to do it ourselves. Halifax, Nova Scotia, on our own. Let's go. So we made port in Halifax a little bit before 9 a.m. Our port day scheduled to be 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. That was the all aboard time. And well, we got ourselves ready. We made our way off of the cruise ship. The pier at Halifax, pretty interesting. It's, it feels like a traditional pier. When you navigate your way off of the gangway, you immediately enter into a little bit of a port area that has some shopping. It's got some tour information, and it's really part of a historical district there in Halifax. This was the gateway for people to come to Canada. Pier 21, very similar to Ellis Island in the United States. The Immigration Museum there. And this is a harbor hopper. This is an amphibious vehicle that at the time we didn't think mattered, but would later play a part in our day. Like I said, our plan was pretty simple. The waterfront in Halifax is renowned for walking, and there's a Maritime Museum there. And so we hit the streets and we started making our way to the waterfront. We were stopped though by a little cruising history there, Cunard, and also this statue park right at the entrance to the harbor front. We gazed and wondered at the art. And then we got back to our walking. The waterfront, from the very beginning, you could tell it was going to be cool. There was live music, there was a buzz, even this early in the morning, a decent amount of people. And it's known for a lot of things. It's known for its art, it's known for its restaurants and its shops and its residential buildings. You might even see birds. But a really nice, kind of walkable, explorable area. I would say even if you had mobility issues or in a scooter or wheelchair, a lot of flat, good surfaces to move around on, and a lot of interesting things to explore. Those light posts are twisted on purpose. Like we said, we got a big art influence here. And this is kind of a nice sweeping shot of what you get when you are on the waterfront there in Halifax. Just serene, good places to stop and relax, and good photo ops. And like I said a couple times, art. We have a couple other pieces of art here, functional seating. And there's also, places to explore, a lot of these little container type places, a lot of these little shops that you would expect to see at a cruise port. Like I said, we're making our way to the Maritime Museum, seeing the sights along the way. Just another look at some of the shops, and some of the eateries, some of the places to get into, which we would explore later. Especially this little food court area. That's right, that's a Cow's ice cream. And what is that? Poutine? Donair? Finally, let's get to the Maritime Museum. This big wave statue is interesting. We saw kids playing on that later in the day. And those flags are our first sights of the museum. This is the last Corvette warship out in front of the museum. And they had some interesting seating that looks like a whale in totality. Another shot of the Corvette. And then they also had another vessel docked out there that you could explore, the Acadia. Now here's the entrance to the museum. And once we got in, we were immediately met with this lighthouse lens, which was pretty cool. One thing that really was distinct about this museum, a lot of ship models. And they had a whole model building club there that met to keep their models restored. Old World War II mine on display. And then the big draw here is the Titanic artifacts. This was one place that after the Titanic sank, a lot of artifacts were recovered from the wreckage. Of course, on the night of the sinking, a lot of, unfortunately, the people who passed away were brought to Halifax and buried here, but survivors were also brought here to be tended to. And so it's a little somber, but I'd seen a lot of Titanic stuff this year, and being here kind of where it ended was really kind of heavy. This is a wild quote, lifeboats off the ship far from full. this is a great place if you like history. If you're into the Titanic, there was a lot of interesting stuff in the Maritime Museum. But again, the thing that was really amazing about this museum was just all these model ships that were there with such detail. You really could have just spent a lot of time hanging out, looking at it. And they did a really great job of showing the ships through time and how they had changed. And they did it with these great model representations, just massive. And then they also had some small ships too. So kudos to the model makers there at the Maritime Museum in Halifax. Really impressive work. I tell you what, if you have any affinity for water at all, these maritime museums are pretty cool. So after the museum, we decided that we would grab some lunch. I was told a couple things that I had to get here in Halifax. First was the donair, which is like a gyro with a weird garlic sauce, and of course, Canada's famous beaver tails, which is essentially fried dough with cinnamon and sugar. Quite delicious. But after lunch, we were like, hey, we still got a lot of time. Let's check out that amphibious vehicle. So we boarded the Harbor Hopper, and this turns out to kind of be like a city tour by land and sea. Now, we got some instructions from the fine tour guides there, and we started to make our way through Halifax. The big highlights in Halifax that we saw, of course, we saw a lot of the little city areas, the city blocks, but the big highlights were the Citadel, and then, of course, our time in the water. I'll pipe down a little bit. You can see some of the sights here in Halifax. So this begins our journey to the Citadel. Now the Citadel is a fort that protected the harbor, and so it's pretty wild. I mean, much of it is a massive land mass with a fort at the top. Now these masts are super interesting. They would hang flags on those masts to let sailors know what the weather conditions are like. And of course, you have the famous clock tower there, but the masts are really the indicators that were used to help ships get in and out of harbor. And what's wild, if you look really close, you can see that this is still a working fort with an actual military guard at the entrance. The big defense part of the Citadel are these trenches. They're waterless moats, but if you were going to take this fort, you would have to navigate those trenches. And it worked, all the way around till we got to the top. What's interesting is they have some interesting technology I wanted to share with you as we move on. Pay close attention to what's coming up next. These are remote control lawnmowers, keeping the grass trimmed there at the Citadel. And as you can see, the higher up you get, the better view you have of the harbor. As we descended, we had one more really good look at the clock tower. And then as we moved on from there, we started to make our way to the water where our currently dry vehicle would get wet. On our way to the water, we did take in some more of the city. Looks like just pretty much any other downtown that you go to. You've got all the stuff. You got some shopping, and you got the restaurants, and you got the people. You got some nice park areas. We did go by a famous cemetery. This is where a lot of folks who perished on the Titanic were laid to rest. And then we made our way to the waterfront. Now the funny thing is they told us they were going to gun it to get into the water, but there was a little bit of a surprise to be had once we gunned it into the water, and well, it's going to become pretty obvious really, really quick. I guess when this guy ducks down, it should have been an indicator what we were in store for. Yep, bit of a splash zone. I was wet. I was wet on both my face and my shirt, but it was fun. And then we took to the harbor. We did a little bit of a harbor tour where a lot of the things that we'd just seen walking the waterfront, we were able to see from the harbor tour. It's kind of a cool look at one of the other harbor hoppers fully submerged or immersed in the water. It's kind of funny. I can't get enough of it. This vehicle's wild. It looked like a ferry, but it almost looks like a UFO on the water. You know, it's like it's not distinct as what's the front there. And then you'll start to recognize some of the areas on this harbor front. We'll be able to see the Maritime Museum coming up there. A better look. This is a historical St. George Island. Some looks at the twisted art. And then we're even going to get a peek at the wonderful Caribbean Princess as we make our turn to start heading back to dry land. Overall, it was a really great tour. I feel like we were on that vehicle for a little over an hour. I feel like the price was $30 per person, and we did get to see a lot of that, you know, harbor area parts of Halifax. And here we go, a little less of a wet ride coming up out of the harbor. And then after a little more of a tour, we made our way back to where we started, and we disembarked the harbor hopper. All in all, I think we spent about 4 hours in Halifax. Really happy with the decision to explore on our own. And of course, when you're doing it with a friend, it makes it all that much better. This was really a cool waterfront town with a lot to do, and I can't wait to go back to Halifax. Cruise ship excursion or explore on your own? What do you normally do? And did you see anything in Halifax that you'd like to check out for yourself? Thank you so much for checking out this video. If you like more of these adventures, please consider subscribing. Hit that like button on your way out. This is Tony for Lido, Loca, and until next time, we'll see you on the Lido. Bye.